Stay off my land!
You'll regret this.
When my Uncle Frank passed, I thought his funeral would be the last time I'd face a loss so heavy it crushed my chest. I was wrong. The next storm came with Judith's name on it, because 4 days later, she and her son Tyler appeared at my doorstep, clutching a clipboard and radiating arrogance. That same son would later shove my daughter into Clearwater Lake, leaving her bruised and bleeding as he sneered. That was their first mistake. Their second was showing up the next day, acting like nothing happened, as if my daughter's blood wasn't still staining the dock, as if I wouldn't tear their world apart for it. This wasn't about property lines or HOA rules anymore. It was about survival, and I'd make sure they drowned in their own hubris before they touched my family again. The hardest part wasn't the grief of losing Frank. It was unlocking the door to his lakeside cabin in Maple Grove, Wisconsin, a place he'd fought to keep his entire life. That cabin wasn't just wood and nails, it was a lifeline. 6 years ago, when my wife's death left me hollow, this place pulled me back from the abyss. The creaking deck, the gentle ripples of the lake, the way the oaks whispered at dusk, it saved me. Now it was mine, for me and my daughter, Sophie, who was 12 and still carrying the weight of her mother's absence. Sophie's eyes sparkled when I described the lake, how it shimmered like liquid silver at dawn, promising a fresh start. This cabin was our chance to heal, to find peace. But peace, I'd learned, comes at a cost. The day before we moved in, I replayed Frank's last voicemail. His voice, usually steady as stone, cracked with exhaustion. That Judith woman keeps hounding me about the trail access. She won't let up, Mike. I'm worn out. I sat in my truck, Sophie asleep in the back, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. Whoever Judith was, whatever she wanted, she'd pushed Frank to his limit. If she thought I'd bend, she was about to meet a man shaped by harder battles. I didn't just inherit the cabin, I inherited the fight. The morning sun was still low, mist curling over Clearwater Lake, when a polished silver SUV rolled up the gravel drive like it owned the ground beneath it. I was hauling a box of Sophie's books to the porch when the driver's door opened, and out stepped Trouble. Blonde hair in a tight bun, oversized sunglasses, and a clipboard gripped like a weapon. "I'm Judith Hawthorne," she declared, striding toward me in heels that sank into the dirt. "President of the Maple Grove Homeowners Association for 7 years. Call me Judy." I didn't. "Mike Larson," I said, voice cold. Her smile was all teeth, no warmth. "Your Uncle Frank was agreeable," she said, extending a manicured hand I ignored. "We had an understanding about lake access. This path," she tapped her clipboard, "runs through your property. It's the community's preferred route to the lake. The public trail's too far for our elderly neighbors." I didn't glance at her map. "You're saying people trespass on my land." "Not trespass," she said, voice syrupy with condescension. "Enjoy. The lake's for everyone." Frank got that. Her tone carried the weight of every HOA threat I'd ever heard comply or be crushed. Before I could respond, the SUV's passenger door slammed. A lanky kid in a muscle shirt and a gaudy chain necklace stepped out, smirking like he was untouchable. "This is my son, Tyler," Judith said, beaming. "He keeps the trails in line." "In line?" I repeated, jaw tightening. "Some residents don't respect rules," she said. "Tyler's convincing." He cracked his knuckles and glanced at Sophie, who was watching from the porch. My blood surged. "You and your son need to leave," I said, stepping forward. "This is private property, and I don't recognize your authority." Judith's smile twitched. "Community cooperation is vital, Mr. Larson." "I don't cooperate with trespassers," I snapped. "This land is mine. No one crosses it without my permission." Her eyes narrowed. "You'll find defiance doesn't end well here." "I don't scare easy," I growled. "And I bury threats deeper than that lake." She turned on her heel, Tyler winking at me as they left. My fists burned. The war had begun. I should have sensed trouble when the birds went quiet by the lake. Sophie loved the dock, called it her thinking spot. That morning, she'd gone out with her sketchbook to capture the sunrise. Instead, she found Judith and Tyler. Her scream hit me like a gunshot draw, terrified, not the kind a child makes over a stubbed toe. I dropped the hammer I was holding and sprinted, boots pounding the earth. When I reached the dock, my heart stopped. Sophie was in the water, blood streaming from her forehead, her arms flailing weakly. Judith stood on the dock, arms crossed like a prosecutor. Tyler was beside her, laughing. "What the hell did you do?" I roared, diving into the freezing water. I pulled Sophie to me, her small body shaking, blood mixing with lake water on her face. "Dad," she whispered, "they pushed me. They said I was on their path." I carried her to the dock, my eyes burning into Judith. "She attacked Tyler first," Judith said coolly. "We were defending community property. Tyler spat into the lake, inches from my face. My vision blurred with rage. "You touch my daughter again," I said, voice low, "and I'll make you regret breathing." Judith smirked. "You're a squatter on borrowed time. We'll document this assault." "She's 12, I snapped. "You threw her like trash." "She trespassed," Judith hissed. "Next time, we call the sheriff." I stepped closer, nose to nose. "Try it. I'll be waiting." I carried Sophie home, her head against my chest, her breathing shallow. Something snapped in me that day. They didn't just cross a line, they obliterated it. I didn't wait. The moment I settled Sophie on the couch, bandaging her wound, I grabbed my old tackle box, fishing line, and a faded private property sign I'd found in Frank's shed. Tyler was back at the dock, tossing rocks like nothing happened. I moved fast, silent, and slammed his head against the railing. He yelped, but I didn't care. I bound his wrists with fishing line, tight enough to sting. "You like pushing kids?" I spat. "Let's see how you swim." I shoved him into the lake. He flailed, splashing like a trapped animal. I yanked the line, pulling him back. "Feel that fear," I said, crouching. "That's what you gave my daughter." He begged, choking on water. "Please, man, stop." Footsteps pounded behind me. Judith charged, screaming, nails aimed at my face. I caught her arm, twisted, and slammed her into the mud. She shrieked, her pristine jacket ruined. I drove the sign into the ground beside her, the words "private property" glaring in the sun. "This is my land," I hissed. "Cross it again, and you're done." A faint buzz overhead caught my attention, a drone, recording everything. Good. Let the world see. By morning, the footage was everywhere. Neighbors whispered, some nodded, others stared. Lines were drawn, and Judith wasn't done. By noon, HOA flyers littered every mailbox in Maple Grove. "Violent outsider assaults community leader," they read, with a blurry photo of me pulling Tyler from the lake. Judith went door to door, fake tears streaming, a neck brace she didn't need. "He attacked me and my son," she sobbed to old Mr. Callahan next door. "He's dangerous." Sophie watched from the window, confused. "Why is she lying, Dad?" "Because some people weaponize lies," I said. "But lies don't hold forever." I stepped outside. "Hey, Judith," I called across the street. She froze. "Let's talk about my daughter's stitches. Or how Tyler used her face as a punching bag." Her face twisted. "You assaulted a minor," she spat. "There are rules here." "I don't follow rules written by frauds," I said. "Enjoy your spotlight, Judith. It won't last." I'd already started rallying allies: the retired firefighter down the road, the widow fined for her roses, the mechanic whose fence Judith had reassessed. The war was on. 2 days later, county trucks rolled in, men in neon vests carrying clipboards and demolition orders. A man in a cheap windbreaker shoved an envelope at me. "Correction order," he said. "Your shed violates zoning codes." The shed, Frank's old workshop, where Sophie painted, was slated for destruction. The paperwork? Signed by Judith Hawthorne, HOA liaison. She stood across the road, smirking. I tore the envelope open. "This shed's been here for decades," I growled. "Your maps are fake." "We received updated documentation," the man said. I ripped his clipboard in half. "You're not touching it. Check who signed your permit." He hesitated, glancing at Judith's name. One worker muttered, "This feels wrong." "Wrong," I said. "She's forging county orders." "You want a lawsuit?" They backed off. Judith's smirk vanished. I marched toward her. "Forging permits now? You're done." She leaned in. "You're just a thug with a sad story. Anger doesn't make you right, it makes you a threat." I smiled. "Good." I went inside, opened my laptop, and called Ellen Carter, Frank's old friend and county recorder. The tide was turning. The next morning, hammering woke me. Not wildlife metal on steel. I stormed outside and froze. A new fence, gleaming and sharp, stretched across my property, cutting into the lake. Judith stood nearby, directing workers. "Make sure it hits the water line," she called. "HOA restoration starts here." "You've lost your mind," I roared. "This is a compliant environmental barrier," she said smoothly. "Your land's under HOA jurisdiction now." "This is my property," I snapped. "Deeded since 1948. Her smirk widened. "The new map says otherwise." That was it. I ripped a fence post from its concrete base and hurled it into the lake. The splash echoed like thunder. "Touch my land again, and I'll tear your world down." She didn't flinch. "Vandalize HOA property, and I'll have you arrested." "Call the sheriff," I said. "Tell him to bring a surveyor." A worker hesitated, glancing at my phone as I showed the drone footage Judith in the mud, Tyler flailing. "She lied about the permits," I told him. He nodded, uneasy. Judith hissed, "That's illegal surveillance." "It's evidence," I shot back. That night, I opened the old floodgate at the edge of my land. Water roared through the ditch I'd cleared, flooding the HOA's prized park. By morning, their gazebo was sinking, their picnic area a swamp. Judith arrived, heels sinking into mud, her face contorted. "You sabotaged us." "No," I said. "You built on my water." "Your mistake." "You'll pay for this," she screamed. I held up a USB drive. "Deeds, footage, permits. Copies are with the county, the sheriff, and every HOA member. You're done." The crowd of neighbors grew, murmuring. One shouted, "She used our dues for her fence." Judith's control was slipping. The HOA meeting was chaos, chairs packed, tempers flaring. I stood at the front, flanked by allies. The firefighter, the widow, the mechanic. The drone footage played on a loop. Judith's fence, Sophie's assault, the flood. No one laughed now. Judith burst in, muddy but defiant. "This is a witch hunt," she shrieked. "Not for long," I said. "We're voting you out." "You can't," she snapped. "We can," said the mechanic. We followed the bylaws. I laid it out. Judith's fraud, her assault on Sophie, her fake maps. She lunged for the projector, yanking the cord. The room erupted. "Tell that to Sophie's stitches," I warned. "Tell it to the neighbors you flooded with your lies." An elderly woman slammed her cane down. "We were a community before you turned us into a war zone." Judith's voice broke. "I made this place better." "You made it a prison," I said. "Resign, or we'll remove you." The room chanted her ouster. She stormed out, heels clicking, defeated. But the fight wasn't over. The courtroom was cold, all marble and silence. Judith sat at the defendant's table, no jewelry, no smirk. I took the stand, voice steady. "Mike Larson, father of Sophie, victim of HOA misconduct." The evidence was damning. Drone footage, forged financial records, fake permits. Judith's defenses crumbled. "I protected the community," she claimed. "By attacking a child?" the judge asked. Silence. The jury convicted her on assault, fraud, and land seizure. As she was cuffed, she spat. "You think this changes anything?" "Not in my town," I said. Outside, I faced the cameras. "She broke us. We rebuilt without her." That night, I held Sophie by the fire. "She's gone," she whispered. I nodded. "For good." Judith's fall wasn't just about footage or trials, it was about a community finding its voice. Sophie's smile returned, her nightmares faded. The lake was ours again, free of HOA chains. Neighbors who once avoided me now waved, shared stories, rebuilt trust. Tyler left town. The cabin, once a battlefield, was a home again. I learned something I'll carry forever. Peace isn't handed out, it's fought for. Justice isn't polite. It's raw, hard-won, and built on truth. Judith forgot that power isn't a tightlight's purpose. A father's love, a daughter's tears, a community's resolve, those outlast any clipboard. What about you? Have you faced a Judith in your life, someone who tried to crush your peace? Share your story below. Was I right to fight back with force, or should I have stayed calm? Where do you stand on violence versus injustice? Let's make this a conversation. Like if this hit you hard, subscribe if you believe in standing up to bullies, and comment "never again" if you'd fight for your family like I did. Because sometimes, the line between right and wrong is drawn in the mud, and you don't back down.